at first you draw a line in the sand and you say, there's no way to do that. And then you get to that stage and you say, well, I guess it's not quite that bad.
That's my friend, Ted. Ted has amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. And this is episode 3 of our podcast. For the last few months, Ted and I have been getting together every week to talk about his life with ALS. It's a disease with no cure, a disease that progresses relentlessly. And if that isn't bad enough, as it's playing havoc with his motor neurons, Ted is also being bombarded with other health issues. Things like urinary tract infections, kidney stones, and recently, a collapsed lung. We've been spending a lot of time lately talking about Ted's lines in the sand, things he just doesn't want to have to deal with, things he doesn't want to have to live with. One of the first major lines in the sand was having to use a sling and lift. It's a kind of hoist to move him from wheelchair to bed or to bath.
I think my hesitance for the sling was when Robyn's father was passing. In fact, he was in this, we kept him in this room until he went to hospice. But he would be lying in bed, they would put him in a sling, put him in the bathtub, put him on the toilet or whatever, and could do nothing but move his eyes. And there's no way I wanted that. And I knew, I was so happy that we did have that option of medical assistance in dying. Even though I am kind of putting the line in the sand and then moving the line in the sand, maybe it's half-hearted. I mean, I do the sling for a while, but I still would rather end it before things get even uglier than they are now.
Okay.
There we go, now it's recording. It's the red light's on. So we're just recording me getting out of my chair into the lift.
Okay, so I think I'll just put this here.
Could you take the shirt off?
Yeah, so lean forward. Okay, turn up your shirt.
Okay.
And put the sling into the back. There we go, lean forward. I'm going to bring this leg, bring the material under the other leg. Okay, so the material is going to cover up. Yeah,
So
okay.
the bottom leg of the material goes underneath my legs.
Straps get
from
crossed.
Just below my bottom.
Just a bit. All right. Lift is coming.
So Robyn is bringing the lift over. Pushing in towards me. So the lift has what looks like a big thick coat hanger on it. And on the end of each side are some hooks. So she's putting the straps over top of the hooks.
The straps from the sling.
Straps from the swing.
So the two straps that come up from underneath your legs each go on one side of the coat hanger.
Difficult to explain.
All right, now you're strapped in, so I'm going to lift you up out of the wheelchair.
So now I'm lifted into the air.
It looks like you're sitting in a hammock, but you're sitting straight.
A hammock with a lot less fun.
So I was going to ask you about the sling. So now that you've had it for a little while, how does it feel? Does it feel less like a major deal and more of a convenience, or?
Yeah, it's not quite as bad. And, and sometimes if Stephen's helping me get into bed, he doesn't even use it, so.
So it feels less of a major deal for you.
Yeah, it's not quite as bad.
I can't imagine my future, really. I mean, not that we had planned it out, but still, the future did involve Ted. I mean, it was us two together, growing old together, even though we don't have a lot in common and never have. I had this vision that my husband and I would grow old together. We'd see our families grow up, perhaps have their own families, the usual. And this would be our family home. When we bought this home, it was because it was with that in mind. It was our vision for this house. It would be our family home until we could no longer stay in it. And I suspect that time is coming much sooner than I had envisioned.
I try to get over there at least twice a week, if not more. And then sometimes it just happens that I'm there 3 days in a row.
This is Ted and Robyn's daughter, Hannah.
I love spending time at my parents' house. I like them both a lot. Yeah, you can see things happening. Like just yesterday, we tried to go out for a walk and he couldn't control the wheelchair anymore, which was, something he could do, maybe like a couple weeks ago. And especially, you can see it throughout the day as well, depending on how the medication is going and stuff, like just difficulty like lifting up a water bottle to drink from. So I'm actually on the lookout for one of those tall cups with a straw out of it, so that he can just like lean over and drink out of it. It's most of the time I find it most difficult to deal with seeing him sad about it. But recently his neck's been quite weak, and that's really difficult to see him not being able to hold his head up anymore. Because I mean, I think that it's kind of unlike some other things. It's like a physical representation of him becoming weaker and of his progression, versus other things like a hand not necessarily working perfectly. It doesn't kind of reflect the disease overall, because you can it seems like a minor inconvenience, whereas actually seeing his head lowered, it's difficult to see him experiencing that. I think the thing that freaks me out the most is that one day I will be driving to the hospital knowing that he'll be ending his life. And that can really overwhelm me sometimes. Not the fact that he will choose to die, which I completely respect, and I can be okay with that and I can come to terms with that, but the fact that I will one day, who knows when, have to drive to the hospital and have to be sitting in the car. Like, I'll have to go to sleep who knows how many days ahead of time. Maybe it will be a month, who knows, but like that I'll have to get in the car and drive there knowing that's what I'm going there for. And that scares me a lot. And when I kind of hear the mention of it, it kind of jolts me. It hasn't stopped taking me by surprise yet when it's mentioned. And I just can't imagine how difficult it must be to have to make that decision about when the right time to go is. Because I want to keep having conversations with my dad as long as possible. But at the same time, it's such a terrible disease and it takes away so much from you that I know that it's the right thing to do and for him to choose to do.
When he had his second assessment this week, I mean, because of course this is all very theoretical, right? You know, it's kind of, it's not that it's easy, but it is in a way. It's easy to talk about it dispassionately. But having that second person come, and I asked her, tell me what it actually looks like. What do you do, and what does it look like? I was curious about what the physical death looked like. Would it be violent? She said, no, it's very peaceful. We'll see. I mean, now I've been through 2 deaths, and I frankly thought they were both awful. I don't know, it's hard for me to believe any death could be, I mean, what does a peaceful death look like, you know? But she described the physical acts of the 3 different medications she'll use and how many minutes between each one, that she would administer each one, what would happen to Ted's body as she administered each of those 3 drugs. And as she was describing it in very neutral terms, I felt a little bit of horror, you know. I felt a bit of shock and fear, and a little bit of panic as well. But I imagine that's quite normal. I'm still really grateful that he has the choice. And I know he's really struggling with how he'll know when is the right time. And he may or may not ever know.
I think it's important to have a little bit of hope anyway, because there is no cure. So just try and live the rest of your life the best you can.
So what would your definition of hope be now? What does hope mean for you, Ted?
Well, I don't know, there's this unrealistic hope that something could kind of stop in its tracks, and then with neuroplasticity and some brain cells, neurons that aren't completely damaged could come back. That would be probably unrealistic hope. More of a realistic hope is that that I can come to terms with ending my life and not causing too much pain to those around me. You know, it's just not knowing when the right time will be.
There's something you said last time you and I talked, and I think you've just done it again now, that I'm curious about, because when I asked you about hope, you referenced your family, that it was about your family and about being able to do something right for your family. What about you, though? What about what you want?
Yeah, well, that's the whole problem. Because, like a lot of people, I think I was somewhat selfish in my life, and, I'm just afraid that I would say, you know what, I just want to end this. I want a clean break. I don't want to suffer anymore. But then I can see from their point of view, them saying, well, he still could have been there. We still could have talked to him. And I guess I reflect back on people I've lost in my life. And you know how you feel. It's just, if I could just have one more day, if I could just speak to them one more time, or, or have a, recollect a funny, amusing story, something like that. I'd love to do it. And I think I mentioned before too how the psychologist said to me that, it's not you doing this to your family, it's ALS. But again, I guess just to sum it up, I just hope that I can do it at the right time. Again, if there was any hope, it's been carefully extinguished time after time. I had sort of this coping mechanism that was, well, maybe it will progress very slowly, but really just what's been happening in the past few weeks, I sort of doggedly told myself, oh, you don't have a fast progression, you don't have a fast progression, you're slow. You've got upper motor neuron, which is slower. But I think it's just a classic ALS, 3 to 5 years from the onset. So again, things like that, these things that I had as hope, maybe denial, which is again not a good strategy, but things that I had hope for, they're kind of gone. Hope of a cure or a plateau or something is pretty much out of reach. So I think I have to set a different bar for what hope is.
Next time on My Friend Ted.
So he was prescribed a saline nebulizer, so essentially breathing in saline mist.
Right.
And the first time they put the mask on you, weren't still very well. All the relatives who have come from out of town to visit him, they're all crowded in the emergency area with him. And you looked at Stephen, I think, or Jeremy, and you said,
Stephen, I am your father.
with this mask on and all this saline mist circling around him.
That's coming up on the next episode. Thanks to Robyn, Hannah, and of course, my friend Ted. For show notes, please visit the website podcasthouse.ca. I'm Robert Ouimet. Thanks for listening.